Hi, everyone. My name is Nika Simovich Fisher, and I'm an assistant professor of communication design at Parsons School of Design. Outside of teaching, I'm a writer and I'm a designer. And today I'm going to tell you a little bit about a project I did last spring called Invisible Nightlife Review. This is an anthology I co-edited and designed in collaboration with Daisy Aliato, who's the co-founder of Dirt. And in case you're unfamiliar with Dirt, they're a media company and a publication that creates a space for thoughtful writing about design, culture, and technology. There's a lot about internet culture, and it's through a very literary lens. And I had previously worked with Daisy on a few essays, and she had told me about an existing series they had called the Nightlife Review, where authors would write prose about real life cities and being out at night. And she was really interested in releasing a special edition that was speculative in nature, so one that was about cities that did not exist. And through talking, we both realized that we had several interests and overlaps through the classes I was teaching and our research and our writing. We're both really interested and inspired by Invisible Cities by Italo Calvino. This is a book from the 1970s that consists of brief prose poems describing 55 fictitious cities that are narrated by Marco Polo, many of which could be read as commentary on culture, language, memory, death, or just being alive in general. And we both liked it as a way of sharing a story that felt universal and evocative, but still being imaginative. And so we decided to work together to create a pitch call for the students at the new school where I work. And we created a story called The Invisible Nightlife Review, and we invited students across the university to develop a short format essay or personal narrative or poem or diary that explored the cultural, emotional, and philosophical questions that arise when you're up late. And I had my research assistant, Dave Mocker, design this beautiful graphic, and we put out a pitch call and invited everyone across the school to submit essays. And since many designers hadn't written before, we organized an info session where Daisy described what she was looking for when she reviews pitches. It was really a nice way of bringing in academic writing into a more accessible format to a mainstream publication. And I think it's just really useful. So even if you are doing, you're studying liberal arts or you're a designer, I think being able to communicate your research quickly so that it could appeal to an editor is just really important in today's age where so much of our work gets distributed on digital platforms. And while we were doing this pitch call overview together, we also put together several references that could be useful to the students that were cross-disciplinary in nature. And they overlapped both the art world and literary worlds. We shared examples like Maya Man's Read It and Weep, which is a generative diaristic exploration online. And we also shared Sheila Heti's According to Alice, which was an essay that was edited from a conversation Sheila Heti had with a chatbot that was trained on her own writing. So even though it was generative, it still very much was in her writing style. And then 41 False Starts is by Janet Malcolm. And it's an essay about David Saul, who's a painter. But the whole essay has sort of an unexpected format where it's just a series of ways to start the essay. And so I thought that was really wonderful in terms of both the language she uses and also having kind of an unconventional format to tell a story. And we received 18 pitches across 5 programs at the university. And then we launched it in July, and 8 students now have a published byline on a national publication, as well as on this custom microsite, which I designed and coded. You can check it out on invisible.dirt.fyi. This is the homepage, and if you visit it, the entries slowly rotate around. But if you were to visit it right now it's 2 p.m. where I am, you are more likely to see the screen. And so the website itself extends the speculative nature of the site. It has open hours and is only available between midnight and 6 a.m. So it kind of extends this fictional format to the web space as well, and the design complements the storytelling that we've developed in the anthology. But there is an Easter egg. If you click on the tiny little star, there's a way of breaking in. And so the students use prose to explore their identity through different memories that they wrote. This piece by Michaela Emerson informed how we organized the anthology thematically. It was called 4 Kinds of Night, and she defined nights as never-ending nights, blood nights, white nights, and buried nights. And then that informed the system for the site as well. So there were 4 different categories that were inspired by that piece, and then they each had a corresponding illustration that was appended to each of the stories. So there was a thematic connection. And it really connects to Italo Calvino's original version of his book, where there are several different ways of categorizing the essays. I also think using fiction to write it gives students an opportunity to explore sensitive issues through play. Mandy Kim wrote about how casually we share the word "get home safe" in text message communications, and it's kind of an ominous thing to say, but we throw it around so freely. And so she expanded that into a choose your own adventure horror story. And we also looked at how we could create this into a more multimedia experience. And so she created a very haunting soundscape to go along with the piece. So you could either continue reading with the sound or abandon reading it and just listen to the audio. And similarly, we wanted to explore how we could do storytelling on top of other platforms, even though they were all contained on this designed anthology. So Pete Riley had this wonderful piece called Traveling Spark, and it was built on top of Google Maps, where you could trace the night of a Bic lighter. And so this allows students to experiment with a form and also think about how you could tell a story through a nonlinear space. And so through doing this and using creative writing as a tool in the design classroom, it just became more confident that design and writing should be taught together as different sides of the same discipline. They're both ways of contributing to cultural discourse, developing a personal voice through language and form, and also staying technologically literate. I think all of these things are really important right now, as I said, when things are more visual and distributed on digital platforms, and there is so much AI slop that I think to stand out, you have to be intentional. And it's really not about posting all the time or matching a format to beat the algorithm. I think it's really about being true to yourself and finding an expression of that feels both honest and exciting. And it helps Dirt stand out too as a media company. So this piece was featured in Adweek about Dirt's approach to using creative writing as an innovative advertising approach. And I think it's the same thing that's happening in education right now and also with design. I think there's just all these opportunities for personal voice and creative writing to help tell complicated narratives and help students have more agency of how their work is understood and distributed. I think this also has a lot of political implications as well. In terms of my other research, earlier or last year, I wrote a piece on Donald Trump's visual language during the 2024 election. And I wrote it for Fast Company, and I described how he had this very distinctive style of advertising that a lot of people could contribute to. And I referred to it as political spam. And I was noticing that there were just a lot of different types of products that were being distributed under the Donald Trump name, but actually none of them were distributed by the Donald Trump organization. It was all third party efforts. So, for example, there's like a commemorative $2 bill, a watch, a Bible, a talking trout, and sneakers. And so they all felt like they were part of the Trump campaign, but they, like I said, they were just made by different people that had nothing to do with the Trump campaign. And I think it was powerful because the aesthetic wasn't too polished and it was really easy to join in on the conversation. So it was more populist in nature. And more recently, Zoran's campaign also leaned into this vernacular approach too by referencing the visual language of the city of New York. So there were bodegas and painted signs all over Queens. And then you kind of see that in the logo that was developed. And that was developed by Forge Design. And then also he commissioned artists like Sarah Elawad, who has been featured on the right, who have their own personal style and methodology that's a little bit more energetic and certainly not the kind of typical political campaign that we saw Kamala or Biden use in previous years. And I think partially why that type of energetic visual language is so impactful is because it's so easy to create polished design right now. For example, in Figma, which is a digital design software, you can actually create a slideshow by vibes. And I think if you look here, you'll see that there's all these different aesthetics that look fine, but they really remove the context from the form, which is really what good design is all about. And so with these templates, you can make something that looks like a graphic designer made them. However, there's not a lot of substance behind how it's developed beyond that. And so I think having things that feel a little bit messier or energetic show traces of an individual thinking through something rather than using a style that's just meant to look polished. And so in terms of how I'll grow this project afterwards, I'm teaching a new class right now called Publishing in Public, which I designed and developed. And it brings in all of these themes about distributing content, developing a point of view and taste and curation, as well as connecting with an audience. And I am going to be distributing dispatches about how the class is going each week. So you can follow along on LinkedIn, which I have shared here, or on my Instagram stories. Thank you so much for your time. Once again, my name is Nika Simovich Fisher. If you'd like to follow me on Instagram, it is labud.nyc. Or if you'd like to follow along Publishing in Public, you can follow me on LinkedIn. Thank you so much for your time.